Hey to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Imaging Services, ChiroThin, Chiro Moguls, Mahalo Wellness, Local Gold, Chiro Health USA, The Goodman Factor, Chiropractic Rocks, Winner's Edge, Accident Records, Chiro Tax Pro, Full Script, your online dispensary, Angela Pearson, author of I'm Not Contagious, and Digital Hustle. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 174 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I am your co-host Luke Millette, and here is your host Jim Chester.
Hey everybody, so today we had the opportunity of interviewing Angela Pearson, and if you want to know about a mom on a mission, stay tuned. All right, so we are live here. This is episode 174. We have Angela Pearson. This is really exciting because this is kind of outside of the box of chiropractic interviews, but I think that this is going to be something that crosses over really well into our chiropractic audience because you're going to be talking about personal freedoms when it comes to freedom of choice, and we're going to really take a dive on the topic of vaccines and what it is to be an advocate for something that we all should have more knowledge about rather than finger pointing and being confused about. And like I said to you yesterday, the easiest group of people to control are those that are confused. So hopefully we can bring some clarity to our audience and the people that will be tuning in today. But before we get started, I just want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks, Luke.
Our pleasure.
So I know that you believe in a holistic lifestyle and that it hasn't been easy for you to get to where you are today. Maybe give us some background story about where you were and how you got on this holistic journey and why you made the decisions that you have for your family.
Yeah, so thank you. So I grew up in a financially challenged family. And with that, they also had no idea on how to take care of your body and your health. So we grew up on processed foods, a lot of which that came from food banks. And I remember eating mashed potatoes from a box. And I remember eating green beans from a can or spinach from a can. And as I got older, I went out to eat, or I went to someone's house and they mashed the potatoes up, they boiled potatoes and they mashed them up. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I never had like real mashed potatoes. This is what it tastes like. This is what I've been missing. So, so since that happened, I was just kind of like this, I don't know, I had to take another look at health, and I had to take another look at how I was nourishing my body, right? So when I met someone, his family used essential oils and they cooked from scratch. So this is where I kind of like absorbed a lot of information and was just kind of like, wow, this is amazing. The food tastes better. It's not salty. And they used essential oils for medicinal purposes. And they weren't, ones to use Tylenol or anything like that. But, when I had my son, we were talking yesterday. And so I had my son and I did vaccinate him. But he had a reaction. So he was hospitalized. And the doctor told me that it wasn't a reaction or anything like that from the vaccines, excuse me. So I was a young mom, so I kind of believed everything that he was saying. What did I know? I wasn't a doctor. And I had that whole mindset back from when I was a child, right? Because as a child, we were seen and not heard. We weren't allowed to ask the hard questions. I wasn't allowed to question anything. So given that opportunity, now that I'm a mother, I was almost afraid to even question the doctor. He was an authoritative figure. So he had a degree. I didn't have one. And but when I did ask him, was this or did this have anything to do with the vaccine? And he said, no, it's perfectly normal. Everything's fine. But yet my son was hospitalized. He was dehydrated. And then that was actually one of the side effects. But he was just saying, no, it's perfectly normal. You're fine. And the second day, my son was released from the hospital. And we went on about our day in our life. But he never received another vaccination after the age of 2. But like I said, when I was with my this person and his family used essential oils, and that kind of, I was pregnant with my daughter. I remember I was pregnant with my daughter, and that kind of set the bar for me to want to know more about vaccines and food. So I then started researching chemicals that they put in food, what GMOs were, why you want organic foods. I started learning about the pesticides and the herbicides that they spray on our foods. And when I started learning about the vaccines, I would go to the CDC website and I would research all the ingredients. Okay, so I understand they put formaldehyde in the live viruses. They do that to weaken the virus so then that they can inject you with them. But I wasn't quite sure if that is the route that I wanted to take with my daughter, especially when I started to think back about what happened to my son and he was hospitalized, because I started connecting the dots. And so I actually went on to some Facebook groups and got familiar with other parents, got familiar with their stories and their experiences with vaccinations. And it just kind of dawned on me that this wasn't right for me. This wasn't right for my family at this point. I remember, I was so big into holistic health after researching everything. I was so sick to my stomach because I didn't understand how come, the FDA or the government would allow this to even happen, and why we were, eating all these foods or taking all these vaccinations and putting them into ourselves and putting them into our bodies, how this could even be legal. Because my whole thing is there's no one size fits all with diet. There's no one size fits all with diet. Everyone has different hormones. Everything fluctuates, even on a psychological level. We grow up differently. Our environments are different. So you may handle something one way. We can go through the same thing. You'll handle it one way and I'll handle it a completely different way. So I think for me, that is when it began. So that was 20 years ago. And I've just been following people like Dr. Shen Penny for a long time. I follow Del Bigtree. She's a huge advocate for the unvaccinated community, where he creates a space to find out the truth about vaccines, and something that I admire and respect.
As I think about what you're saying here, it makes a whole lot of sense. It's not add something else in, it's clean the blood up inside of you. And that's really what health is healthy blood. And it's healthy cells. And there's this saying that you are what you eat. Well, you are what you eats as well. Mm-hmm. And that's where we matriculate into this bigger idea of you are what you put into yourself, but you become what is now in you. And that's really what we have to really think about is if you eat processed food all the time, those are the cells that are going to regenerate inside of you. And if you eat GMO all the time, those are the cells that are going to be regenerated inside of you. If you eat a glyphosate-laden produce, then those are the cells that are going to regenerate inside of you. So on a cellular level, what you're saying is absolutely true. And when you do ask for some type of a clarity from the white coat syndrome, which is doctors, a lot of people are really afraid of doctors. And they don't know how to react to questions, and they get anxious and they have anxiety about what might happen if we do this. And there's no real time set aside to actually give a explanation of what are the possible outcomes and why would I do this. It's just schedule it, get it done, and the outcome is maybe not what you desire. So I think that was a lot of, being a parent is scary. I mean, getting pregnant, it might be a little scary because you don't know what to do. And
It
so
is
many
scary,
people have beaten you.
And I completely agree. And that's the thing is, you're pregnant, and then when you're young on top of it, and when you're taught to never ask questions, you're given like this mindset, this really small mindset when you're just a child, and you're afraid to ask questions. You're afraid to stir the pot. Because when you grow up in a financially challenged family, and you grow up in a family where they're really strict and kids are seen and not heard, or they don't understand how the body works, and they don't prepare you for, how to take care of your health, you then start to grow up and you start to, you have to break that mindset. You have to break that mold, right? And for some people, it's not so easy. And I think that's why when I speak to certain people, I think that's why I can have compassion for someone depending on their environment. I think how one is brought up, how one is raised, definitely affects how they receive information, and how they educate themselves, and if they're going to poke that bear or not, right? And ask those questions and get deeper with what they should be knowing. And I think when you become a mother or when you become a father, something just kind of comes over you. You just get in this protection mode, right? It comes naturally. You want to protect your children. So you kind of, you get out of your way and you develop a different mindset, because now it's not about you anymore. Now it's about another life that you're responsible for. So how far are you going to go to protect your child? Are you just going to hand them over to the white coats and let them do with whatever they want to him or her? It is your job as a parent to research and ask the questions so that you can protect your children. So that is what I do now. I am not afraid to upset the doctors. I am not afraid to ask the questions. It's very, very important for me to understand everything. Give me the paper, let me go home. And then if I can have a conversation with you and you can talk to me about the vaccines and you can talk to me about the ingredients, then we might have a conversation. But when I ask, there's been many times where I have been, because I've had 3 different pediatricians with each of my children. And each time I've gone there and had a conversation with them, and they always ask me, are you going to vaccinate? And every time I tell them I am not, then we start to have this conversation, because I want to know how much they actually know about vaccines, right? Because they don't go to school for that. They go to school to learn, to tell you that vaccines are safe and effective. That is all. They have like a day and a half of vaccine education, and that is the gist of it. So when I bring this up to a doctor and they can't tell me what's inside the MMR vaccine or the DTaP vaccine, you can't even tell me what's in the influenza vaccine, then you and I do not have a conversation until you learn what the ingredients are.
That kind of leads me to a side question here. It's not scripted, but what are some other breakthroughs or aha moments you had while doing your research?
For me, it was all the side effects, not just, but the reactions. There's 1% of all adverse reactions that get reported to VAERS. Because when parents go to their doctors, like I did with my son, and we start asking questions, and mine was very vague. I wasn't as bold as I wish that I would have been, but at least I asked a question if this had anything to do with the vaccine. So when that happens, there's a lot of doctors that will never report that to theirs. That's a problem. That's a huge problem for, for statistic purposes. If you're not reporting every adverse reaction to theirs, then the numbers are less. I think I actually wrote this down. Yeah, I didn't write it down, but take my word for it. There's only 1% of adverse reactions get reported to theirs, and that's a problem. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, because that's huge. I mean, that's just such a small number is what I mean, but it's huge when you think about how many side effects and how many complications that children are actually having to these vaccines that are going unreported.
And that's why the number is so small, because no one's reporting on it.
Exactly.
So you're an author. You wrote the book, I Am Not Contagious. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the book, and how would the world change if more people read it?
So the book is based on true events. And it's written from the perspective of my 6-year-old son. So there's not another book like that. We hear all the time from the perspective of adults, such as myself, or, other strong advocates, but you never hear it from the child's perspective. And their perspective is a little bit different than ours. Ours goes in a little bit deeper on a scientific level, where they're just kind of feeling picked on, and they're feeling bullied by society. If the news is on, which I can't stand CNN, but sometimes it happens to be on inside my house, and it's just constant negative news. But when when they talk about vaccines, and if my son happens to hear it, or even on Fox or any other news outlet, if they're talking about vaccines, especially when the measles outbreak took place in New York City, he's there, and I encourage him to ask questions. That's huge for me, because then I want to get on his level and I want to be able to answer his questions. But they make it seem like the unvaccinated community are contagious. And when my son was kicked out of school, he didn't understand. He didn't grasp the concept as to why he couldn't be with his friends anymore. So as a parent, I have to get him and try to help him understand what is actually happening. So I talk to him and I educate him on this legislation that was passed into law, and that Governor Cuomo passed it into law, and this is how everything happened. So that is what this book is about. This book is a message that we're here and we're not going anywhere, but it's from a whimsical kind of feel from a 6-year-old child, and how he's explaining what's happening in his world versus an adult's world.
Yeah, it makes me reflect back on a couple months ago. I was actually at an event that had RFK Jr. Speak at, and I had a chance to interview him. And there was a nice dinner the night after, and sat with this couple from Vermont, and they were talking about how their kids weren't able to go play at other kids' houses for birthday parties and whatnot, because the parents knew that their kids weren't vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that that's it's a social rift, and it shows that people are really afraid of something that they don't really have the knowledge behind. And
there's a lack of education there, and of course it's the media's fault. They have this these strict narratives that they play by because of who owns the media outlets, and I won't get into that, but I think you probably know what I mean. So if everyone's not playing by that narrative, they get punished. And there are medical doctors and scientists that are now stepping out, and they're speaking out against vaccines, and then they're being shunned in the community and the medical community. And what I don't like is when they know that vaccines, especially pediatricians, when they know that these vaccines aren't safe, and then they don't speak up. So then you're going against your oath, do no harm. You're going against it. So when doctors do speak up and they speak out against vaccines, I don't understand why they are not being applauded. Because I think that the government should applaud them. However, we already know that because Big Pharma kind of runs everything, why that doesn't happen. But I mean, you look at the doctor in New York City who was talking about even what was happening with the COVID cases. And we have another doctor who's a senator. I think it's in Minnesota. I think he's out of Minnesota. And he was talking about how the COVID cases were being tallied and how it should be put on the death certificate, even if the patient didn't die from COVID. So he was coming out and speaking out against that. And then now he's being targeted. So these are the things that are happening. So we have our medical doctors who are starting to understand the truth behind the dangers of vaccines, but they're scared to say something because of how the medical community is going to treat them.
Well, it's professional shaming.
Absolutely.
And it's blacklisting them.
So you're also a lifestyle mentor. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like and how you help other people get healthier and be better at what they do.
Yeah, so, I was just talking to Jim about this earlier. So during the quarantine and the production of my book, I had been searching for a network marketing company to provide me all the desires that I look for in regards to creating a passive income. It took me forever and a day to find one that I can actually stand behind, because I'm not going to stand behind products that I don't or wouldn't use myself. So I actually help other people attain the same freedoms that I do. And I also show them how network marketing can be built with what they're already doing without interfering with what they're already doing. So, and if you're not familiar with network marketing has created more millionaires than any other industry in the world. And that's a fact. You can look it up. There's no capital when you get involved, and if there is, it's a very, very small one as opposed to real estate, because real estate's number two, right? We have people like, Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins, Shalene Johnson, there's Paul or Bob Proctor. These are all huge fans of the network marketing industry. So because they understand how the industry works. And you look at Bob Proctor, his wife is in network marketing herself. So, and do you know who Bob Proctor is?
Of course.
Okay. Huge, right? I love him on The Secret. But no, this is what I do. So I just kind of allow people the same access that I've been given. And this industry where you don't need an excessive social media following, because I don't have a large social media following. How I go about, a lot of things that I do is private messaging. I find that to be the most effective in building relationships and building rapport with people. So I also show people that you don't need a large following to be successful at something like this. And this is for people from all walks of life, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you're a doctor, whether you're an attorney, whether you're a personal trainer, because we have all of those people on our team. And we even have, my personal mentor, he is an ex-attorney and an ex-police officer, and he was able to leave his career and do this full time and now make 6 figures a month. So I think passive income, I think everyone's looking for a passive income, especially with everything that happened with COVID. If you're not working, the money stops. those are facts. So it's very important that we start to utilize other resources so that if this pandemic or any other pandemic ever happens again, that we're going to be well protected and we're not going to be concerned about losing money. There's some people who aren't even collecting, they haven't received their stimulus package yet, or they're having issues with collecting unemployment, and they're struggling. Small businesses are collapsing every single day. Just in our community, we had about 8 or 9 restaurants that closed permanently. JCPenney's is folding. There's what is the other big store that's closing here? Kohl's is closing. I mean, these are big name brand companies that are just folding because of what happened to COVID or what happened because of COVID. So this is what I do. I'm here to help people get on the right track, create a passive income, and create a cushion for themselves and protect themselves and their families if this pandemic ever happens again. Or like me, if you ever lose your job, like I did, for instance, I had to leave my job because of what happened to, this new legislation being passed into law. I left, and I was left with no income, because I wasn't able to go to work, so my money stopped. So now I'm doing better than ever. So I couldn't be more grateful to what happened. Everything, right? Everything happens for a reason. And if you hold your head up and you stay positive, things come to you that way.
You made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Imaging Services, Chiro Chiro Moguls, Mahalo Wellness, Local Gold, Chiro Health USA, The Goodman Factor, Chiropractic Rocks, Winner's Edge, Accident Records, Chiro Tax Pro, Full Script, your online dispensary, Angela Pearson, author of I'm Not Contagious, and Digital Hustle. Let's hustle.
And now you're supporting what we do.
Absolutely.
And sponsoring Keeping Free Speech Alive in Chiropractic. And just to go off of some of the messaging that you just shared with us, the stats aren't on my table here, but it's been said that 30% of all chiropractors, because of this COVID situation and this scamdemic that we're all living through, that 30% of chiropractors won't open their doors again. So we're taking a group of people that have 60,000 licensed in the United States and cutting that by 30%. And chiropractors, in my opinion, are the people that are actually advocates and catalysts for natural health in this world. And they're actually the people that are out there on the front lines protecting families. And they are the drugless, non-surgical approach to healthcare. And when we think about like advocates for the future of a non-pharmacological basis of personal freedoms and health, chiropractors are the group that we should be supporting because they are the educated. They are the doctors. They are the ones that can actually be the ones turning the crank for the future of a non-pharmacological based society. And that keeps the body healthy from inside out, not needing anything extra from outside in. And I really believe that what you're saying about these big box businesses closing, it's because they're ineffective with their items. And chiropractors are not ineffective. They just need to have the ability to stand alone and not to be beat down, in my opinion, by the pharmaceutical industry and the American Medical Association. So what you're saying is right on point when it comes to not only the big box stores, but the mom and pop shops. Like you said, these small restaurants are closing because it's not because they're ineffective at their business, but when you change the paradigm of how you service your community, that's why they're closing.
Yeah, it's I couldn't agree more. And chiropractors, we need in this field, we need chiropractors and holistic practitioners, I believe, more than any other person aside from like our surgeons and things like that. And I think that, I know that there's a handful, and I know that we're trying to get better at what we're doing. But if we combine what holistic practitioners do with surgeons and they work together, I think that would definitely create longevity for people in general. So I think when chiropractors were told that they couldn't open up their doors because of COVID, I think that's the most asinine thing that I've ever heard in my life, because as we already know, there's chiropractors help so many people with their chronic pain every single day. If it wasn't for chiropractors, these people would be in so much pain on a daily basis, or they would be on drugs, trying to just get through the day. And look at what happened. We have, children who are being abused more because the schools aren't open. They're not eating because the schools aren't open, because they're not getting their free lunch. There's so much that's happened, and I call COVID-19 the gateway to all hell, because that's exactly what happened right after COVID or during COVID. It's like that happened, and then the riots and all this other stuff that happened, that is the gateway to hell. And we need more holistic practitioners. So it saddens me to hear that 30% of chiropractors' doors aren't going to open.
Well, the other side of that is before we started this, and a lot of people that watch our show know that I go out and do marketing for chiropractors, and I find new patients for chiropractors. And I used to kind of like wave the flag that said chiropractors save lives. And it's true. And it's so true. And I also stand in front of people and tell people that if I don't tell you the truth about chiropractic today, eventually someone will mislead you with drugs or surgery. So if I don't tell you the truth, it's my job to actually inform you as to why you should come in and see this doc and see if they can help you with this thing that you just checked, this questionnaire, telling me that you have headaches, you're not sleeping, you're blah, whatever it is. There's nothing to lose but your health. And that's really why I started supporting chiropractic 11 years ago now, was because I saw this as like the future in health. And I saw everything else as just a big scam. And I didn't want to go see a regular doctor because I'm like, well, what are they going to tell me, that I have to get on this thing and pop this pill for the rest of my life? I'm not into that. And then I started researching what chiropractic was doing. And I'm like, well, they have a philosophy that the body can heal itself. And if there's no nerve interference, then the body's self-regulating. So all these things made sense to me. And then the whole pharmaceutical industry has a commercial every 25 seconds on TV. So I got rid of my TV. And I'm like, well, I don't want a TV, and I don't want to listen to that messaging.
And the long list of side effects that they have to now list legally when they have the commercials. And I wish that they had to do the same thing with vaccines. Can you imagine if they did the same thing with vaccines, all the side effects? And I think that they should. I think that the vaccine companies should be held liable, which they're not. You know what I mean? That was back in 1986. That law passed, the 1986 Act, where vaccine companies, manufacturers weren't held liable for any type of adverse reactions or anything like that. But like what you were saying, I turn on the TV and you see something for pain meds or any drug for that matter. And then the huge, long side effect list, but you don't see that with vaccines.
Well, here's the thing, Angela. The same people that brought us the opioid crisis are the same people that are bringing us the vaccine crisis. And it remains to be seen what happens, because right now we're only talking about a small portion of the population that are having vaccine injury. And wait till we see what happens in the downstream effect if they have any type of policy saying that healthy people like us are mandated into something that we don't agree with. And then we'll have a huge epidemic, not just an opiate epidemic, but we'll have a vaccine epidemic.
Well, see, and that's another thing too. doctors get paid when their patients are sick. They don't get paid to keep their patients healthy. Could you imagine if, we were able to change that? I think then doctors would then take their approach a lot differently, as opposed to just writing scripts every time someone comes into their office. They don't run, I don't think sometimes the proper tests, or maybe they run too many tests because there's a kickback when they do that. But it would be nice, and it would be a nice breath of fresh air if doctors got paid to keep their patients healthy, as opposed to only getting paid when they were sick.
So we're going to switch gears a little bit now. We're going to talk about marketing and advertising and how you promote yourself. We know you're trying podcast marketing, which is awesome. What other things are you doing to raise awareness about your book?
So I have a fear of public speaking. So just doing this with you guys, it's so challenging for me. You have no idea.
Great job.
Thank you. I am really pushing myself out of my element for sure. I just remember just diving into the whole Grant Cardone thing and doing the 90-day mentorship program, and then doing the 3-day boot camp, and then going to 10X with my daughter to the conference out in Las Vegas, and then diving into the 10X stages. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, like this is so not me. This is not who I am. And I don't like being in the limelight whatsoever. I don't like that kind of attention. So I've been off of Facebook for a couple of years because of that, right? What am I supposed to post, and I get it. So now I'm like learning, like, if you're there and if you're going to add value to someone and you're going to, post positive things, or if you have a message even, like that is what those platforms are for. It's not just to connect with your family. So as I said earlier, I do not have a large social media following, which I do not need that with the network marketing that I do to be successful. However, I do need somewhat of a following to promote my book, right? If I want to get the message out there. So I'm coming to you good old boys to help me. And I'm also working on a couple of publications that I just finalized yesterday. So we'll see where that gets me. And I know that I'm going to be with you guys for a little bit. And I'll be able to kind of keep you guys in the loop of things and how I'm doing. But I do use Facebook now. I have a personal one. That was my personal one that I had, and I wasn't on it for 2 years. And then I have one that I started just for my book. So now I'm like, now I've got like 2. So which one am I supposed to use? And now I just wish that I can merge them together, because now I'll post over here, or I'll post over there, or I'll post here, and then I share the same post on my personal page, which is kind of silly to do that. But, I had no intentions of using my personal Facebook page again. But I thought that was silly because I have a lot of great people on there that I love connecting with. And then now I also use Instagram. So I was using Instagram. I like using that app to connect with people. And again, I like to private message people, but again, I like to keep my circle, like the people that I follow are inspirational people within the medical community, in which I believe, in the holistic field. But yeah, I think that is it for me. So, but I'm learning as I go, because I'm really getting out of my own way to help get this message across, because this, my purpose is greater than myself. So we'll see. I'm looking to grow, and I'm looking to learn and explore new options, and get myself out there a little bit more.
Your podcast is right around the corner.
Yes. I have to get a fan. You know what? I have, I actually got a microphone and one of those little black circles that you have there, but I don't know how to set it up. So it's just sitting there in the box. It's a pretty little gold microphone. So I tried hooking it up, and I'm like, I'm not tech savvy, so I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm hopefully I can get it up within the next couple of weeks or so, or maybe call someone and have someone help me do it.
So another quick offshoot question. Network marketing seems to be the big thing for you. What kind of network marketing? Are you in any BNI chapters or something similar?
So I'm with health and wellness field, and that is what I do. So, the products that I promote and will only use are non-GMO, organic, plant-based products. And this company and these products were built off of, the founder, one of the owners, he had inflammation and he was in chronic pain all the time. So, they had someone kind of formulate a product for just him, and it worked, and he found a lot of relief. And so now this is what they do, and this is what this company was built around.
So let's talk about you personally a little bit. What other podcasts do you listen to, if any? What books do you like to read, and what are some hobbies that you have?
So I kind of found like this really great podcast that I listen to now. It's called Chiro Hustle. I don't know if you guys heard of it or not, but it's a really great podcast. It kind of fits into what I believe.
I've heard of those guys.
Yeah, right. Two great guys who help chiropractors get their message across. But I do listen, I'm actually reading a book by Al Strider. It's called Icebreakers. So I don't know if you guys know who Al Strider is. He's really big in the network marketing, circle. And he wrote this book, one of many books that he's written, and it's called Icebreakers. And it really just teaches you how to break the ice. With just normal people, when you're out and about, how to talk to them, and just how to, without being awkward. So I think that's a really great book. And other than like following Del Bigtree, he's big on my list, High Wire. I follow him all the time. Dr. Rashad Buttar. He's another one that I follow and I listen to. Another huge advocate for for our community. I follow RFK. There's so many others. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. The list will go on and on and on. But I follow a lot of people and listen to everything that they have to say. But yeah.
What are some things that you do for fun?
Oh, geez. So for fun, other than being with the kids, we have an Australian Shepherd. We swim, we hike. We like being outdoors. I love to dance. I'm a hip hop dancer. I'm getting older though, so I haven't done it in like for so long. I'll have to see a chiropractor if I try to do anything too much. I might pop a hip out or something. But yeah, I like dancing. I like spending time with the kids. I like seeing them explore. Because I'm a homeschool teacher too now, so that's something that I do. But I don't really, when I homeschool, like when I first started, I used to think that, okay, so I have to have everything together. He's got to sit down. And I'm like, that's just stupid. Like, I'm not going to have him just sit there and just do schoolwork. That's so stupid. So we have a very relaxed environment, and he's great with numbers. great with time. I told him, mommy has like a podcast to do soon, and he'll calculate the time right down to the very minute and seconds. Okay, so mommy, you have like 1 hour and 24 minutes left before your podcast. So that's the kind of homeschooling that I do. And I get enjoyment out of that. That's a kind of, I don't know if that's a hobby, but that's definitely something that I enjoy doing. What else? I mean, we live in Syracuse, New York, so the sun doesn't shine too much here. So it's like living in a black and white photo most of the time. So in the winter, I've been here since 2001, and I still haven't gone skiing. I still haven't done anything like outdoorsy in terms of like winter, because I don't like being cold. But I'm looking forward to trying like dog sledding. I think that'll be fun. But like in the winter, in the summertime, we just like to keep the doors open and just stay outside as much as possible, because it only lasts for about 2 months. And then even in the summertime, you can't stay out there too long, because then you're fighting mosquitoes, So it's just like, because you have like this wet, long winter, and then you're feeling, okay, now nice weather is here, but then, I don't know, the mosquitoes are horrible. They're just bad. But what do you like to do, Luke?
Oh, I love watching and studying movies. That's
studying the movies.
Because I came from a filmmaking background, and so whenever I hear some great movie come out, I like to kind of break it apart and see what makes it good. And
okay, so
like that.
This is a little off, the topic and stuff like that, but let me ask you what your thoughts are, and maybe you can tell me no if you want to, and I'll be quite all right with that. But with what's happening with the whole Disney and the subliminal messaging that they're putting into Disney cartoons and even like our movies, what is your take on that?
I think it's pretty shocking. I've actually been studying that for over 10 years now, since they started doing it in the 90s. And Disney can say and deny whatever, but it's just like, I don't really have thoughts on it. It's just a weird thing for a children's company to have allegations, brought against them for. And so anytime like some new clue comes up, I, want to figure out like what this is. And yeah, it's just a really weird thing that they've been doing for a while now, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I definitely, I heard about this a few years ago. And, with everything that was going on in my life, personally, I just kind of, swept it under the rug, because I had like other things that I needed to, get done, you know what I mean? Because I was under like, a time clock, if you will. But just researching just recently, and just everything that's been happening and surfacing with Out of Shadows. Have you seen Out of Shadows?
Mm-hmm.
And just looking.
That's the thing I watched back in Iowa.
Yeah, we saw it.
Yeah. So, and just it's definitely bizarre to me in terms of when you do look at a lot of the Disney movies, The Lion King and so on. And there's always a parent that is killed in these movies, or there's always a parent that is left out of the equation, if you will. There's never really two parents, but there's always some sort of death that happens, and you do wonder why. You're desensitizing, is what they're doing to our children. So now when I watch, I can't help but try and see if I notice something like that, especially when something new comes out, which I don't think we're going to have anything new that comes out for a little bit because of COVID. But when you study the movies, are you now looking for those type of subliminal messages?
Well, I haven't been in the Disney loop as of recently, But when I do study movies, it's more about like subliminal stuff, but not quite to that nature. More like what is the sub story going on in the background, like with Pulp Fiction and Tarantino movies. There's always like a second story going on that people usually miss because they're so entertained by the main narrative.
Gotcha. That's interesting, though. I like that.
Yeah, I can share some stuff with you if you're interested.
Absolutely.
So I think our last question is, where can people go to find your book or find out more about you? What are some web resources you could give our listeners?
Absolutely. So www.angelapearson.com is my website. That is where they can subscribe and be the first to know when my book releases. And that should be very, 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 very soon. So, and other than that, like my IG handle is Angela K. Pearson. And same with my Facebook is Angela K. Pearson.
Awesome. Well, if anybody is interested in getting the release of Angela's book, go to angelapearson.com. And I Am Not Contagious is the title of the book. And Angela, I just want to thank you so much for being our guest today and being on episode 174 of the Chiro Hustle podcast and sharing your story and your truth and your journey. And it's been quite an honor to get to know you. And I look forward to what we can accomplish together. And I just want to thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you. I feel the same way. Thank you so much.
And let us know when the book comes out.
Absolutely. Of course.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Bye. You too.
See you.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.